Hello, Tech Pros, episode 200.
Don't get too stuck in current technologies and be willing to explore, because really the world changes constantly.
Welcome to the podcast where I chat with professionals who are getting the job done using technology 7 days a week. Each week we start with Motivation Monday. Tuesday is about productivity, Wednesday, leadership, Thursday, technology, Friday, people and communication, Saturday, entrepreneurship, and Sunday, being unplugged. All right, let's get started. Hello, Tech Pros. This is Chad Bostic, and I'm excited to introduce our featured guest today, Travis Tidwell. Happy Thursday, Travis.
Happy Thursday to you, Chad. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Hey, man, congratulations. I just want to say a big congratulations on being lucky number 200. This is episode number 200, and every big milestone, even number, I feel like we need to have virtual confetti or something. So pop.
Yeah, I feel it. Yep. It's coming through the microphone, definitely.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Travis Tidwell has been developing advanced enterprise software solutions for 15 years, ranging from embedded GPS navigation products to open source web solutions. In 2008, he developed and founded the popular open source multimedia solution Mediafront at mediafront.org, but has since then created Form.io, a groundbreaking technology that provides a form and data management system for serverless applications. And Travis now serves as the CTO of Form.io. So, Travis, a lot of stuff going on throughout your history, and we'll get to all the awesome stuff in serverless applications and what you guys doing there at Form.io. But what were you doing on the GPS front, doing embedded GPS navigation?
Yeah, I think really a lot of it just stems from college. I graduated electrical engineering, so I really wasn't even in that much software then. But what I was really interested in was really just kind of the low level mechanics of how things work. And from a software perspective, it just so turns out that the first job I landed was writing software for a fish finding company called Lowrance out of Tulsa. So any of the fish finding fishermen out there, I'm sure, very familiar with Tulsa, Oklahoma-based Lowrance Electronics. And so from there, I really was just writing just some low-level software, and that's kind of really where I fell in love with software just in general. And just really kind of loved the low-level mechanics of embedded software engineering. Really, most of the stuff that I was doing was working on the displays. So anytime you go and you buy a fish finder, that fish finder's essentially running on a custom operating system, or at least it was at the time. I think they've moved to Linux since then. But we had a custom OS, and this custom OS was based in Microsoft Basic, where we'd basically build screens in Microsoft Basic, and that would be the UI, and the buttons you would press would be, you could almost quite literally headbutt them. They were so big on the screen. And and really that's kind of where I fell in love with software to begin with. And just and from that, it kind of just moved into the web. And a lot of that just really revolved around, I wanted to have my own website, and started kind of tinkering with web technologies. And that really kind of sparked my interest in that field, in web technologies, around that same time.
That's pretty awesome. So a tie here to Oklahoma and tie to the fishing industry. Back in the .com days, I was working on some products for that was iBeam Broadcasting and Webcast.com back in the day. And what we were doing was really one of the first streaming media companies. So before YouTube and all that good stuff. And we specialize in both on-demand and live video recordings. And now, granted, Travis, that this was back in the day where high bandwidth meant 300K per second, which made a video about the size of a postage stamp. So you could almost kind of tell what different colors were in the video. Anyway, we were trying to figure out how we could partner with one of the fishing channels or fishing competition things so that we could put a GPS on boats on a bass boat fishing program and have them plotted on a map and show exactly where each fisherman is, and multiple TV camera crews recording different things from different boats and stuff like that. And we thought that would be amazing. Unfortunately, that deal never got done, but we were looking at a lot of companies like Lowrance and stuff like that to see how we could develop partnerships to embed the video capturing equipment that we had, as well as the GPS at the same time.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely come back to the multimedia stuff because that kind of takes me to my next step phase. But one interesting thing about at Lowrance, and it's something that I will always miss. Of course, your first job, you don't know how good you got it. I definitely miss what I had at Lowrance, but it was very common that we would have to go and, I'm making the quotation signal with my fingers at this point, test the software.
Right.
But when you're testing phishing software, you actually have to go fishing. So as a
Gosh
software
darn it.
developer, we would write some software, and I'd go to my boss and be like, I really need to go and test this new piece of algorithm that I wrote. Need to make sure it still finds fish. And that was a legitimate excuse to get out and get on the boat and hook it up to the water. And so it was very common that my workload would be I'd write some algorithms during the day, and then that afternoon we'd go out on the boat and I would just test to see if the algorithms really work. So that's definitely something that I miss about that industry. It was a lot of fun, for sure.
Man, we're going to have to bring you back for a Sunday Being Unplugged episode to see how we can find the perfect job that allows us to go fishing on the clock. But that's another story for another day.
That is definitely it. But it's interesting that you worked for a multimedia company because around that same time, we're talking 2006, was really around the time when multimedia on the webs just really started to take hold. And my first interest was multimedia. In fact, I got really involved with Drupal CMS. And Drupal was very young at that time. I think it was version 4, was not really widespread. But the reason why I got interested in Drupal was I recognized it as being a very good platform for creating almost like a video sharing platform, to where, kind of like a YouTube. Essentially, I was trying to, at that point, try to create a YouTube clone. And through that, I actually realized that there really weren't many solutions out there that did that on-server encoding of videos, because at that time it was really difficult was to get videos in the proper format. People were uploading them in all types of formats. And so the biggest challenge at that point was, okay, not only do you have to get them uploaded on the server, but now we need to convert them. And of course, at that time, FFmpeg was a video encoding library. It was very new. And I wrote a module called Flash Video. And this Flash Video module specifically did that. It allowed for uploads within Drupal, and those would get encoded on the server and put inside of a format that you could put into a Flash media player. And I released that as open source. Most of the stuff that I've done for web has been open source, and
nice.
And that got a lot of traction. But it was really at that point I realized, the money is not really in the back end here. The money's in the front end. It's the media player, right? That people need to play the media. So that point I got really into making media players, which you mentioned this at the very beginning. I founded a project called MediaFront, where I built a Flash media player. That was before Flash was dead. In fact, I wrote a book about Flash way before Flash was dead. And then at that point shifted it over to JavaScript. So essentially, MediaFront, as of right now, is an open source JavaScript JavaScript-based media player for the web. But I've since kind of put that on the back burner. As of right now, I'm 100% dedicated to 4MyO.
So very interesting times way back then, not just on the media side, but just in, running websites in general and collecting information on the internet in general, right? So if you're a PHP guy, it's the same process. If you're a .NET guy, it's the same process. If you're some other language, Java, servlets and stuff like that, same process of building a form in HTML and then potentially, having a backend server that would capture that form data and then manipulate it, do some validation of it, do some, manipulation of that data, maybe concatenating some fields together or changing it up, a date time stamp to the appropriate data type, right? And then passing it on to the database and then storing that data in like a SQL server or a MySQL or an Oracle database, right? But now the world has shifted in so many different ways, and there's so many different JavaScript libraries on the front end, and then even Node.js and stuff running on the back end. So, what did you discover in your past? Because usually on Tech Thursdays, it's all about the past, present, and future of technology.
Right.
So, let's start with this past era of working with these static forms, right? That had to be developed, by a coder every single time that you were creating this.
Right.
What did you discover about this area that kind of led you to where you are now at Form.io?
Yeah, and I'm glad you're going there, because it really, to really fully understand what's happening today, you really kind of have to take a step way back when, like 2006. And where I really got started was in a CMS, a content management system. And there are a lot of developers who are currently, utilizing CMSs, Drupal, WordPress. I think Joomla was popular at the time, although I'm not sure how popular Joomla is these days. And even if you actually look at modern day frameworks, there's one thing that's lingering that I think is being disrupted today. And the one thing that's lingering, and you mentioned, hey, you have these developers building this HTML form. Really what I like to focus on is who is serving the form itself. And what I mean by that is, if you think about it, back in the day, whenever you were doing Drupal was built on with a PHP stack. And PHP, it was really designed to build templates. That's how it was actually built, so that you could actually dynamically generate templates. But these templates were generated on the back end. So if you actually think about it, when the user is actually hitting a server that has Drupal installed on it, or some PHP library, the user is saying, give me the interface. And the server takes that request. It hands that over to PHP. PHP then constructs a template and hands that back to the user. So the user is actually receiving the interface from the server. And that is something that's very critical to identify about historical web-based applications, because that entire paradigm is being completely flipped on its head. And we'll get into that here in a little bit. But one thing that's very important to take note of is that back in the day, whenever you were building websites, you were really developing templates, PHP-based templates. Sometimes you could use, like Jade, or there's other template language, and these are still widespread today. Don't get me wrong. There's some most modern web development frameworks, in my opinion, are still stuck in the past. And the reason why they're stuck in the past is because you are still rendering templates and still making the server send the interface to the user. And this actually worked. Life has been good for a really long time. Don't get me wrong. It's not like this has always been the wrong way to do it. There was a period in time where this absolutely was the right way to do it. The problem is times changed. So what changed? So with those templates being sent to the browsers were very happy with the way that worked. Web browsers, you would go to, you'd type in your domain name in the URL bar, you would hit enter. That would make a request. Your browser might be white while it's making the request. The server would get it, build the template, send it back, and the browser's happy and everything's responsive. What has changed has been the mobilization of the web. And that no more are we in a period of development where websites, where people are experiencing web applications via web browser. People need to be able to experience web applications from a wide variety of devices, whether it's mobile phones, whether it's watches and all the like. And there has been a time, in fact, whenever and I think iPhone, it could almost be accredited to creating the first disruptive phase of web development, iPhone. And that first major disruption really came from the realization that a very widescreen web browser is no longer going to be good enough to experience a website. So there came this methodology that almost every developer knows about called mobile first. Mobile first development came about from the realization that, whenever we deliver these templates to the user, now they're requesting the template from their phones. It's still hitting the server's still building the template, but whenever that template makes it back to the user's phone, that needs to be responsive, and the website still needs to look beautiful. So there was this massive trend in web development called mobile first, where you would basically build your website so that if you scale down the interface, that would make things click into place and it would look really good on a mobile device. But even then, and I still want to make this point, even in that scenario, you are requesting the interface from the server. And life was actually still pretty good for a while at that point. You have the websites, and you have those are still able to see the websites as they used to. Now mobile devices, whenever you go to the website, it's still able to see what it's supposed to. Life has been pretty good with mobile first, and then there's been this new disruption. And the new disruption is that no longer can we count on an actual interface hitting the server. Now you have watches, you have smart TVs, you have your thermostats, you have refrigerators, you have your Fitbits. There are things that are hitting your server that don't need an interface. And so when it comes to web development, things kind of have to fall to the least common denominator. And this next shaking and rattling going on right now is this new paradigm of web development, which is no longer mobile first, it's API first. So you probably heard of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I think of the software development like architectural practices back in the day, when people first announced the MVC pattern, right? Model View Controller. It's like, hey, we're going to separate these duties up. So think about how you're architecting your software before you actually develop it, instead of just, okay, I'm going to start with the data, and then there's like some processing, and then there's a form, and everything stitched together. It's like, okay, we gotta separate everything apart, because here's the model, meaning like the data itself, the view, and then the controller. The view is where all the UI stuff happens, right? It's where all the user interface is rendered. But even in that view of the model view controller, I've always felt that I'm still kind of doing the same thing, all the old web form stuff that I still did many years ago, right? I'm like you said, I'm still sending these this stuff to the client to be rendered. So on the back end, I'm still creating the HTML, I'm still creating the CSS, and I'm sending that to the browser to then render and to interact. But I'm still doing a lot of that stuff on the server side.
Absolutely. In fact, a lot of people that I talk to who are still not quite used to this paradigm shift, and we'll get really deep into all the implications of the paradigm shift that's occurred. I mean, it already has occurred. Is that most people who are versed in MVC, they are like, hey, I'm already doing this. My view's already separated, so I'm good. My view is already separated here. That's what you're talking about, and that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is that the interfaces are still handcuffed to the servers, and even the views of the MVC models, like you quite literally are handing over the model. In fact, you're injecting the model into the view, and then that view is then rendering the markup. But all of that's being done in the server. And if you actually see what's happening in Drupal, and of course I can relate to Drupal because I came from Drupal. Mm-hmm. There's a big problem happening in Drupal right now. And the big problem is really revolving around this entire notion that Drupal was built as a website rendering and website building tool. And the way that you really accomplish that is all of your configurations for your Drupal website are done with an administrative interface, and those tell the Drupal website how to build the page. Like you have a menu system in Drupal, and you're configuring the menu. What you're really doing in Drupal is configuring how to build the website from a back-end perspective. And so Drupal has this massive rendering capability. It's like these massive render arrays that get fed through like a pipeline, and anybody can interact with that pipeline. But ultimately, what you're doing is you're building the website in the back end. This is completely being flipped on its head right now. In fact, you can do a lot of searching on Drupal and what's happening in that community, but there's a headless Drupal movement going on. They call it headless Drupal. And it's really shaking up the development of that CMS because they recognize that you can no longer have the application handcuffed to the server. And that really gets into the serverless movement, because what a serverless application is, it doesn't mean that the application doesn't need a server. A lot of people hear the word serverless and they think, oh, that means you don't have a server. That's not what it means. It means the application has been liberated from the server, meaning the application no longer exists on the server. You can deploy it anywhere. You can put it on a CDN if you want to. In fact, if you go to form.io right now and you walk through our portal and you create an account and you log in and you do everything, the application you are experiencing exists on an S3 bucket and has been deployed via CDN. You cannot do that if it was a server-based web application. It is an AngularJS web app that is completely separate, and it is only separated by REST APIs. And that's kind of where really the market's going. And what that gives you is that gives you a massive amount of flexibility from an application perspective, because now instead of dealing with one server, in fact, I remember when I was doing Drupal development, anytime you wanted to integrate with anything in Drupal, you would have to build a module to integrate with it. Mm-hmm. So let's say I wanted to integrate with Twitter. I would have to build a module in Drupal to integrate with Twitter. To me, that seems completely backwards, because you don't really need a server to integrate with Twitter. You can actually integrate with Twitter entirely from the front-end perspective. Through front-end widgets, you can do OAuth. OAuth is an entirely front-end exchange, so you can exchange things with Twitter. You can get your auth tokens. You can all of these things you can do within a front-end perspective and not even have to do anything on the back end. And because of that, what's ended up happening is, instead of a single server having to integrate with a multitude of services, you've now created an environment where applications integrate with the services, creating this microservice architecture. And you probably heard of that as well. So this whole movement has really sparked a number of these little keywords, if you were playing conference room bingo in a technology conference today, you better hope that you have microservices on there. You also better hope you have serverless on there, because those are keywords that are getting tossed around all the time today. And the reason is because that is how you scale in today's environment, is to build applications that way. So it's caused some problems, some major disruption for sure.
Okay, so in the past, we had these very static forms. We had all the code on the back end. If you wanted to change the front end, if you wanted to add an integration between your website and something else that doesn't even need a backend integration like a Twitter, right? You would still have to build a backend module for that. And I think this is the same thing, honestly. I come from the .NET world. Same thing there, right? Is you have to build all this backend .NET logic in order for it to render the appropriate JS libraries and stuff on the front end so that you could work with it, but still you're doing everything pretty much on the back end for a while. Okay, so now we live in this environment where we have serverless applications. We're building API first applications, right? So everything is disconnected. We're in a disconnected world where we have no idea who on the front end is connecting to this. It could be your new Form.io, it could be a mobile app, it could be who knows what is connecting to this API, right? And that is good. Life is good. So in just a moment, Travis, I want to talk to you about the future of these technologies and what you guys at Form.io are doing. But first, let's take a quick break and thank our sponsors. This episode of Hello Tech Pros is sponsored by Minio Cloud Storage. Minio is a cloud object storage server for developers and DevOps written in Go. The Go programming language is the emerging language of choice for modern cloud infrastructure projects, and it allows Minio to be highly concurrent and lightweight. Minio is Amazon S3 compatible, built with microstorage architecture in mind, but at its heart, Minio is simple, scalable, and supported by a passionate developer and user community. In episode 89 of Hello Tech Pros, I talked with A.B. Periasamy, one of the founders of Minio, about the importance of community support and recruiting software developers who are as passionate about their product's code as artists are of their art. Check out that episode at hellotechpros.com/89 and check out Minio Cloud Storage at minio.io. That's minio.io. Are you new to podcasting? Are you looking for a fast, high-quality, yet budget-friendly podcast production team? Let TransSource Media take care of you. With a team of professional audio and video editors, writers, and graphic artists, they can help you build your podcast from planning, post-production, and platform submission. Using only cutting-edge software and studio equipment, they're here to make each and every show sound at its best. To get a free quote, please visit www.transsourcemedia.com or send them an email at marketing@transsourcemedia.com or call them at 209 888-505-5693. TransSource Media, transforming businesses through the power of multimedia. Okay, we're back with Travis Tidwell. Travis has been developing a lot of applications, a lot of software projects over a couple of decades now, and we've seen this huge shift in very kind of back-end oriented. Everything starts with a back-end and is then delivered to the front end, delivered to the browser to render exactly how I tell you to now this serverless world that we live in where everything's API first, everything is disconnected, everything is meant to be completely separate components, right? And so you guys now at Form.io, so Travis is the CTO of Form.io. What are you guys doing to build on this new paradigm, build in this new way of building applications?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, historically the server was king. Now we live in a world where the application is king. Back in the day, because I come from Drupal, I think it kind of gives me the expertise of data management. Back in the day, we really didn't have a problem with data management, data applications, really heavy form-based applications. In fact, Drupal was really good at solving that problem for a really long time from a very server-centric perspective. Because of this shift in how applications are being built, there's a wide variety of applications that also needed to adjust. And these applications, we like to call them, they are these form-based data management applications. So any application where you need to have extensive forms like registration-based systems where you have a bunch of people registering, and then from those registrations, you need to have them fill out additional data. And then from that perspective, you need to report on the data. It's one thing to take the data, it's another thing to get at your data. And serverless, this whole paradigm of serverless presents a very interesting problem. And it presents an interesting problem around that, data management, data collecting, as well as just figuring out how to build applications in this new world that cater to this complete separation between the front end and back end. So what we're doing at Form.io is we are really tackling this problem head on. And there's a lot of API platforms out there that have kind of cropped up within the past couple of years. They really focus on the data side. What we've done at Form.io is we've really taken a front-end approach to data management. And we've really done so from a single insight. And that one single insight really drove the technology to what it is today. And that insight is that if you were to put a UI on top of an API, what would the UI look like? And I think everyone would agree that the UI is a form. That an API is a way to model data exchange, to exchange data from one place to another. And a form is a UI for data collecting. So you could quite literally build a UI, a very generic UI for an API by just having a simple form. So we then took that idea and took it one step further and said, you know what? If you introduce a form builder that is a serverless form builder, so the form builder that we have, it's entirely serverless. It runs entirely in your front-end application. If that form builder constructed a form, you could quite literally build an API generator from a form builder, where whenever you're dragging components onto the form, you're dragging fields, first name, last name, email, address. These fields represent a schema of data. And really that's what an API is. An API, if you look at all of the like Swagger.io, these are all the utilities out there that take an API and break it up into a JSON schema format. What you're really going to see is a very direct correlation between those schemas and schemas of essentially form schemas. You have a type of field, you have validation criteria, you may have some conditionals on each of the fields. You may have certain parameters like if it should be unique or should this regex be applied to it. All of these things can be applied using a single tool. So now what we've done at Form.io is we've constructed a tool that allows you to build a form that can be rendered dynamically within the front-end application. So when you build a Form.io form, not only do you get the form, to embed within the front end application, but it automatically generates the REST API to support all of the data for that form. And it hooks it up automatically. So you don't have to think about the separation. And I think that's kind of where people are getting really hung up right now is they have to now think about two things. You have to think about the app, and then you have to think about the server. It's happening in software, in the software roles. Used to, you could just hire a web developer. You can't do that anymore. You either have to hire a front-end developer or you have to hire a back-end developer. And a lot of companies are struggling with this. They now have to hire two people when they used to have to hire one person. And the reason is because you have to think about those two problems differently. The API platform is really all about scale. It's about auto. You have to do stateless REST API handling. You have to do authentication, roles and permissions, data management. Whereas on the front end piece, you have to worry about how does the application work. And those were typically done. They're typically done by two people. What we've done at Form.io is we're telling the front end developer, you can build a form using our tool, and we'll take care of all the back end API stuff for you, including scale, roles and permissions, data management, everything. All you have to do is build a form, embed that in your application, and you can wipe your hands clean of it, and you're done. That data will go somewhere. In fact, you can even hook actions up to send emails or trigger webhooks. What we're really trying to do at Form.io is create this form and data management platform for developers. We're not, while we have many successful business owners using our tool for their businesses, really we're catered to the developer to utilize our tool as a tool to build forms for their serverless applications so they can finally introduce data management from a serverless perspective.
Gotcha. So this is not something where you're trying to directly market to the end users or go to the enterprise and say, hey, guess what? If you invest in Form.io, then you can completely absolve your development team. You can get rid of them because you'll never need to do development again, because now your business users can directly build their own forms, their own APIs, their own apps, right? And everything's magical and we'll never need developers again. You're saying, no, this is a tool in the developer's toolbox to build these applications, but to build them faster and build them in the new paradigm so that they don't have to worry about the two different aspects, right? So the data collecting aspect and the data manipulation aspect, it's all together.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I'm saying. And really what we give the developer is the ability to build, for example, building resources, like some complex situations where, okay, you have a form, but what if you want to have a users log in and based on their account, auto-populate forms that they fill out? So that kind of introduces a little bit of data handling, data management. And it also introduces this concept of authentication and all of that. What we've really taken this idea of form and data management to another level and really have introduced a robust platform that even allows you to build resources, these objects, database objects, and have allowed you to link resources together and auto-populate other forms based on those resources and do all of this within the front-end application itself. And we absolutely are catering to developers to do that. In fact, we actually have some business owners who engage us and say, hey, can I just use this to schedule next week's picnic? To those people, we really kind of say, no, that's not what this tool is built for. I mean, you could. I mean, you can create a single form in Form.io, and at that point, it's like Wufoo, right? Or it's SurveyMonkey. Mm-hmm. We can do that, but that's not why we're built. We're not built to schedule or to have people register for next week's picnic. We are built as a platform, as a data management and form platform that you can leverage to build your form-based serverless applications. And we really cater to that. And as far as I'm concerned, we're really the only product on the market that's hitting it from that angle. Form solution that's hitting it from that specific angle of being a platform for these serverless-based applications. In fact, we have a lot of examples where we have full working to-do applications with user authentication and all of that, where the only backend is Form.io. We have a lot of examples out there where we do that.
Awesome. So where is this technology going? So if you look ahead to kind of the trends that are happening in the mobile space, the trends that are happening at the API level, right? Where do you see this, just the overall marketplace, this overall technology stack in general? Where do you see it heading in the next, let's say, 2 to 5 years?
So in 2 to 5 years, and I think this is already kind of happening, we're already exploring this at Form.io, which is once we have this serverless nature of applications and you liberate the applications from the server, a number of really amazing things happen. One, that application is now deployable anywhere, and not only deployable anywhere, but it's also clonable by anyone.
Mm.
And so get this. What we're doing right now on GitHub is we have a GitHub account, which you can go look. It's GitHub/Form.io, just Form.io, one word. And in there, we've actually committed a lot of different applications. Now, these applications are front-end apps. So they're AngularJS based, but however, they have a very special JSON file associated with them. That JSON file is called project.json. That JSON file will auto-configure your API to support the application. So what we've done is we've actually created a way to, using Form.io as the API platform, you go create an account on Form.io, and let's say, hey, you know what? For this customer, they need a to-do application. Instead of having to spin up a separate server like you would have with Drupal and install a database and clone it and have another server running, with Form.io, you quite literally fork the application on GitHub and run a single command line utility that we released that takes that project JSON file, auto creates the API to support the application, and then now using GitHub Pages, you can host the application for free, point it to Form.io, which automatically configures the backend API for it, and have a full hosted working application cloned immediately. And so now people, instead of forking, like front-end apps that aren't connected to any backend, you can quite literally fork entire working applications because they are built in this new serverless paradigm. And these applications will point to your own API. And so you can manage your own users, you can manage your own data and all of that. So I actually think the whole serverless paradigm, what it's really going to promote is cooperation from a number of different developers to really kind of take applications to the next level from an open source perspective, but also just from a being able to rapidly deploy and clone new applications for new customers. It really is a dev shop's dream. They have a library of applications that are very common for their customers. And anytime that a customer comes along and they want an application, they can just fork from the master, change the logo, change the front end. Because it's a front end app, they can change whatever they want. And then automatically configure the Form.io backend using that JSON file. And in a matter of about 5 minutes, their new customer is up and running.
Fantastic, man. That's pretty exciting stuff. Pretty
Thank
exciting.
you.
That's a lot different from, now granted, it's been a few years, right, since I was really heavy into the hands-on web development. It's been a few years, but I would have loved to play around with a tool like that and see how it works.
Well, I mean, you still can. It's not going to require that much. We've tried to set the barrier to entry as low as possible. You create an account. It's a free account. Go create an account on Form.io. And we have a one-click button where you can actually click a pre-built template. And that's the first page you see when you log in. You'll see a row of pre-built templates, and you just click on one of those. And then we have a real easy way to launch it so that you just launch that app and it's working. You can send it to all your friends to create accounts, and you'll see all of their data come into your user table.
Cool.
Within Form.io, and it's immediately ready to go.
Capture all the datas. Awesome.
Yeah, right.
Well, Travis, before we head out, can you share any parting words of wisdom that you have for our audience? The best way that we can connect with you in Form.io, and then we'll say goodbye.
Yeah, so if I were to have any parting wisdom, it would be to say that 5 years ago I thought I knew everything. And I thought that I had discovered the path to my future 5 years ago. If you were to ask me, hey, are you going to be doing now what you in 5 years what you're doing now? Most definitely would have been like, yes, I'm committing myself. And I was really into Drupal. I was fully committed. My words of wisdom is to really identify changes in markets. Don't get too stuck in current technologies and be willing to explore, because really the world changes constantly. Mm-hmm. And just be open to that, and to experience new things, because as of right now, this new serverless thing, and don't get me wrong, we did not coin serverless. We did not coin this whole development methodology. What we've done at Form.io is embraced it. We've embraced a market trend that's been happening to a number of different companies. And so my words of wisdom is to embrace market trends. Don't be scared of this new serverless movement. Embrace it and get excited about it, because it is exciting. And as far as contacting me, you can actually find me. I'm pretty easily found on the web. I do a lot on GitHub. I'm Travis T on GitHub, so you can just go to github.com/Travis T, where you can find me. You can also find me. I'm Software Gnome on Twitter. That has some hidden meaning behind that little Software Gnome, and actually that goes back to when I was developing for Fish Finders. I was a young guy, and I would constantly stay up all night writing software for this company. Well, whenever you don't sleep and you're writing software, I found that you always run into bits of code that make things blow up, and then you stare at it and be like, okay, who wrote this? Who wrote this? Come to find out, you look at the Git logs to find out that you wrote it at like 4 o'clock in the morning. So my joke was that was the Software Gnome would come in and scramble the code before you committed.
I love it.
So you can find me on Twitter. I'm Software Gnome. And then also you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm just LinkedIn at Travis Tidwell on LinkedIn as well. And then, of course, Form.io. If you hit the contact form on Form.io and send a message, I will get that message. We have a great team at Form.io. There's a number of people behind this project. So don't think that this is just all me. We have a wonderful team, all working towards a brighter future of serverless apps.
Awesome. Travis, thank you so much for joining me on Hello Tech Pros. First of all, I just value the take me back to the old school days of doing things like I used to do before podcasting, before IT management, and actually writing the code back in the days. And back then, whenever a new feature that would come out that would allow me to do more interesting things on the server side, I got really, really geeked out and excited about it. But you know what? This is more exciting. So thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Of course. Thank you. And thank you so much, Chad, for having me. This was just a great opportunity, and I really appreciate it.
You bet. Tech Pros, I love what Travis is saying here at the end about, you know what, sometimes we get so wrapped up in I have to be the inventor. Like, I have to be the person that comes up with a brand new paradigm. I have to be the person that if it's not completely, absolutely 100% original and unique, then there's no point in working on it. And that's not the case. That's not the case at all. You can stand on the shoulders of giants and do something better, right? So you don't have to coin it. You just have to embrace it. So embrace whatever change is in your life that's happening. Just embrace some new thing and apply it and work on it and make it part of you. And you will grow. You'll get even better than where you are today. You've been listening to Travis Tidwell, and I'm Chad Bostic. And until next time, take care. The show notes page for this episode can be found at hellotechpros.com/200. Do you use Slack for team communication? Join the Hello Tech Pros Slack channel at hellotechpros.com/Slack. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review, subscribe to this channel, and check back tomorrow. This has been Technology Thursday, but tomorrow my featured guest and I discuss people and communication. On Saturday, we talk entrepreneurship, Sunday, being unplugged, Monday, motivation, Tuesday, productivity, Wednesday, leadership, and back again on Thursday to discuss technology once again. And I'll talk to you tomorrow.